I call the April 24th, 2019 meeting of the Northborough-Southborough Regional School Meeting into session. The first item we have on the agenda is action on the minutes of our open meeting on March 20th, 2019.
So I move that we approve the minutes from the open meeting of March 20th. We'll bring that up.
Second?
Seconded by Dan. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? That passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is educational policy for the approval of an overnight field trip for the U.S. presidential inauguration, January 18th through 21st, 2021, in Washington, D.C. Paul.
So I move that we approve this very early submitted request for a field trip. This is probably the most notice we've ever had for an overnight field trip.
I will second that.
And Glenda seconds. Yes, Sean.
I just had a couple of questions. So it sounds like this has been an ongoing field trip?
This is the second one. Yes.
Second one, okay. It's just, I was kind of surprised at seeing it. I hadn't heard it before, and the cost is quite extensive. And I know that all the Southborough students who attended 8th grade there have all been to DC before. And so and it's open grades 10 to 12, where it's not connected directly to like a standard or a framework or a course that's then going to come back and do direct work on it. I just was wondering kind of about that aspect of it. It's more just an experiential trip for the students.
And so I think there was a question in there.
So I have some reservation about it, but I do understand the value of it and in being historical. I understand that it's year after year, so I just had some questions more about how it works and how that is tied into, like, standards and frameworks and the learning that kids do.
Well, in some of the curriculum standards, it's more seamlessly aligned, right? That's what they're learning, that's what they're talking about.
Yeah.
In other aspects, it's more skill-based. So, understanding how you can take some of the historical components and reference them in order to move forward. So that's why it's considered kind of interdisciplinary. So, and that's why it's open to multiple grades.
Yeah.
You're not going there to just look at one component. It's how can you be an active citizen and use the tools you've learned across your 1 to 4 years at Algonquin productively and positively. And there you get to kind of see it live occurring in front of you. So yes, there's experience, but then there's the development and application of skills. And then in some cases, that direct to curriculum.
Okay. And I guess two more things. The $1,700 hasn't been an impediment in the past.
So we do have students who, if there's a financial constraint, we as a school do make the appropriate accommodations. So, and that's a private thing that we work with the families
Sure.
on.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing is, I guess I could see a lot of value in this if it were over a vacation period. I just am always concerned about students missing time in classroom because you can't replicate the instruction of the teacher, so they're still held responsible for all the work they've missed, correct?
They are held responsible for the work, but equally as I agree with you can never replace that time of being in a classroom with a teacher. You can't replace experiential learning when you can do lifetime application. So they do get the work in advance, and obviously I think we're over a year in putting this forward, so students will be forthcoming and know that they're going to be out.
They can do some planning.
They can do some planning. And then, there's the appropriate accommodation, that it's not how much homework, it's what you're doing with the homework and what's necessary so that you can still remain with your peers in the class.
As Mr. Butker pointed out, we are, for some reason, way ahead of approval. I think it was just coincidental of our field trip.
Yeah, it's more than 30 days.
Yeah, more than 30 days. And Gina, I know last time, who was the last President Obama's election? Came after.
Trump.
Was it Donald Trump? Oh, I forgot that too. So, came to school committee after the trip and came with a few, attended with a few students. They did a great presentation on their experience. Because there's so much time and we have a new committee member, if the committee wants to entertain a visit from Gina ahead of time, prior to the trip, maybe she can come and do a presentation as well.
I don't know, just personally speaking, that wouldn't be necessary for me. I just do think if you look at the agenda, it's powerful. The number of things that these students will experience and learn in just a handful of days. I've had the opportunity to attend a couple of inaugurations. I've been fortunate to be able to go to DC a number of times. Some of the things that they're seeing, Arlington National Cemetery with the changing of the guard, incredible, Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, Kennedy's grave site, they're going to be going to the Iwo Jima Memorial, Capitol Hill, Supreme Court, White House, a number of the different National History Museum, Air and Space. I mean, it is, the things that I can recall from being able to go to some of those things, you know, it's ingrained in my memory as opposed to, yes, and can I remember every 3-day segment of high school? No. But I can absolutely remember presidential inaugurations and all of that history in DC. To me, it's an incredible opportunity for anyone who's able to go, and I remain fully supportive of this event as well.
I agree with Christine. I think, especially for the new members, we always go through these, and as Paul has done a great job in always looking through these applications from the field trips, is that as the time gets closer, I think it might be beneficial just for 5 minutes to have the advisor come in. Sure. And, they'll be far away on our agenda, just to give an update of what's going, or even what has happened in the past, the successes of it. I agree with Dan that I think everything that you see there is just a worthwhile first-hand experience in our nation's capital. It's wonderful, it really is, so.
Oh, yeah, I don't disagree with all of that. I just wonder how many first-time DC people, students, that'll be their first time will be going. Might be their second or third, and the cost seems quite a bit, too. But, the only other thing I would bring up is I noticed that it requires a query for the individuals going, the chaperones. I've seen in other instances where fingerprinting is required because the state law says that districts may review the results of individuals who have direct access and monitoring without monitoring of the school district. And I've seen that done as best practices in some districts, and so I don't know if that's something the district wants to think about. Obviously, if it's teachers going, they're already fingerprinted, but if it's a volunteer chaperone, they would not have been.
We could refer that to policy subcommittee.
A couple of questions. Do we know how many students went last time? And what is World Strides? It sounds like there's some prep that goes into this ahead of time. Is that right?
So I don't know how many students went last time. I don't know if I was principal at that time, but I can look into that.
Probably weren't.
And what was the other one?
It mentions this is a World Strides program. I've never heard of that.
No, I'm not clear on that one. I
It's
can
like
look into
EF
that.
Tours.
Yeah, it's a tour guide.
Oh, okay. I'm like, I
tour
don't know what
company?
you're looking at.
It's a tour company, yeah,
Managing
that
it.
puts it together and runs it.
So is there any kind of prep for this ahead of time?
For students to go on the trip?
Yes.
Yes. So I know that since it's interdisciplinary, there is the awareness, there's the conversations, there's the sharing of the agenda. Beyond that, we don't pull all the students together and do that individual prep because it's open to so many students.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem valuable, but 4 days out of school seems like a lot for a high school kid.
Only 3. One of them is Martin Luther King.
Martin Luther King.
Oh, okay. Right.
As far as, I was looking at the agenda too, and I've been to Washington DC many times, and probably 75% of the things listed I hadn't seen. I mean, some of it's new, some of them are new memorials that haven't, been gone up, and some of it's just so much to see, and, it actually struck me that it was a lot of the things or some of the things that you actually don't get to see. I do see the value. I think it's a tremendous opportunity for the kids. And, as when you go at different age levels, I think you gain more out of, or something different out of it, so even though they may have been, with a family trip or middle school trip, as you get older, you kind of glean new information. So I think it would be, it's a valuable trip, and with the inauguration, that's so exciting. So, Kathleen?
I was, I don't even know how many years ago, but many years ago, Representative McGovern, Jim McGovern, came to Algonquin for a visit for multiple reasons, and I think the AP government class, anyhow, one of the, I think, AP classes was there with their teacher, and it really is different when you're sitting there with your educator, because they know how to steer the conversation, the questions, they bring relevance to the things that you're seeing, and so I think, yeah, this on paper probably looks like a really great trip to Washington, D.C., but when you couple it with the educational component, I think it will, I think it's just very, very different and very, very valuable.
I kind of assume at some point in time we're going to approve this, but, there's a whole bunch of to be announced, to be determined sort of blanks that haven't been filled in on the form. As we get closer in 2021, or whenever the heck this is going to happen, I mean, it would be good to come back to the committee just to give kind of a more completely filled out form. I think, I don't know, put it on the agenda for October of 2020 or something like that. And maybe some of us will be here to actually read it.
Yeah.
Just a thought, but I mean, there's a lot of blanks here. We don't know what hotel they're staying at, we don't know who the chaperones are yet, we don't...
It's early.
Yeah, it's early.
So I assume it's early because they have an early deadline to make a deposit potentially?
There's an early bird discount.
Collective thoughts. I think for the students, as pointed out, it is money, and the students really engage in fundraising because they're committed to the experience, and as we've discussed, it is an incredible experience to be part of an inauguration, let alone not taking anything away from the Washington, D.C. experience, which in and of itself is miraculous. For the benefit of the students, and as Mr. Butker pointed out, we will most likely approve this field trip. We've done so in the past. We've then circled back and heard from the students who attended and participated, as well as the teacher who's engaged in the teaching and learning of the curriculum on a day-to-day basis. For the students, I might suggest that we approve this tonight so that they can begin to do what they need to do to structure their time to raise the additional funds, and certainly come back, fill in the blanks, and make sure that there's some more details about either prior to or after the experience, so that we, again, feel as committed to the experience on their behalf as we did before.
And I would just add that the new history and social science curriculum framework that was adopted, this aligns perfectly in terms of what students will be learning in 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. Civics is a major part of the new framework, as well as U.S. History 1 and 2. So I think it aligns perfectly with the new learning standards, and the history department right now is working on mapping that out. So I think the timing is perfect.
Definitely.
What is the number of people anticipated for this trip?
It said 15.
Yes.
15?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't see that.
So I do, again, some things are preliminary, so.
Yeah, I think that was the max, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. So, I'll go forward and approve this trip and get it, once they have the full details, have they come back to us with a filled out form. So, can I have a motion?
It's been made and seconded.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's right. Yeah,
Well,
discussed it so long ago.
I threw a wrench in it, sorry.
All right. We have this motion. All right. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, so that's 7 in favor, 1. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is the math department presentation on the new business.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Beth Dorr. I'm the chairperson of the math department in Algonquin. So I wanted to start by just giving you a little bit of information about the department, about the people, the teachers in it, and to talk about some of the recent initiatives that we've been doing at school. So our department consists of 18 people. We have 17 math teachers and 1 computer science teacher. And this is most of us on Halloween of this year when we were all dressed up as nerds. So that was the most recent picture that I have of us. So we have a lot of experience as teachers. We do have 3 fairly new teachers. But aside from that, you can see a lot of us have been there for more than 10 years, so we are an experienced department. I believe everyone except 2 people have their master's degree, and those are 2 of our younger teachers that are currently enrolled in Framingham State working on their degrees. So out of all the courses that we offer most of them at 3 levels. So we have the honors level, the college prep level, and then we have the fundamental level, and I'm going to talk more about the fundamental level in a moment. So these levels apply to our classes like Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Geometry, Pre-Calculus. At the calculus level, we also have 3 levels. 2 of those are advanced placement calculus. So we have Calculus BC, which is the equivalent of 2 semesters of college calculus. We have advanced placement AB, which is 1 semester of college calculus. And then we also offer calculus honors. In addition to these, we do have a few other half-year courses that you'll see. We have like a half-year stats class. We have a half-year course called math reasoning. And we do have plans to maybe introduce some more classes, and I'll get to that in a sec. So I wanted to give you a little snapshot of what our curriculum looks like. And so you can see the grades are going to be the columns, and then you can just read across. So if you're in grade 9 and you're starting in Algebra 2 honors, the path that you'll probably take is Algebra 2 honors, and then Geometry honors, Pre-Calculus honors, and then Advanced Placement calculus. Now, we knew this year we are letting freshmen come in and start at the Algebra 2 CP level. So we haven't had this option before in the past, but the state has as a goal that they would like to see as many students reach calculus at the high school level as possible. So by starting kids at this option, we will get more kids to take calculus. Now, this also gives us place. We have a lot of freshmen that will possibly override their 8th grade teacher's recommendation, and they'll want to start in Algebra 2 honors, and the class is too hard for them. But they want to start there because they want to get to calculus. So this way, if the class is too hard, they can drop to that Algebra 2 CP and still make it to calculus. Now, the 3rd row there is Algebra 1 honors, and so that would be Algebra 1 honors, Geometry honors, Algebra 2 honors, and Pre-Calculus honors. So if you start in Algebra 1 honors, you probably are not going to make it to calculus, which I'm fine with that, but I know a lot of parents, for some reason, feel that it's crucial that their kids do that. So what we plan to do is, if you do start at that Algebra 1 level and you want to double up as a sophomore, you can take Geometry and Algebra 2 at the same time. So then you will be on track to take calculus. So below that is our college prep level, Algebra 1 CP, Geometry CP, Algebra 2 CP, and Pre-Calc CP. Now, the last row below the Algebra 1 CP is our new fundamental level. And so in the past at Algonquin, in the math department, we had a program called Integrated Math. It was Integrated Math 1, 2, and 3. And what that was 2 years of high school math spread out over a 3-year course. So we would take Algebra 1 and Geometry, and they were mixed. And so, freshman year, you'd take mostly algebra, would have a little geometry in it. Sophomore year was a little bit more algebra with more geometry, and then junior year was finishing up geometry and finishing up algebra. So that program worked well because that was for kids who needed a slower pace. However, if you start in that track, you were kind of stuck. You couldn't leave and go to another track because you'd only had half of an algebra class or half of a geometry class. So what we have done is we've implemented a new level, and that's called our fundamental level. So we now have Algebra 1 Fundamentals, and that's a CP level course for freshmen, Geometry Fundamentals for sophomores, Algebra 2 Fundamentals for juniors, and Pre-Calc Fundamentals for seniors. And so these students are usually some of our lower level students. In the past, they had a slower pace, and so we had a decision to make. How are we going to teach this content when they really could benefit from a slower pace? So we looked at maybe adding another period of math for them, but we really couldn't fit that in the schedule. So what we're doing instead is we're taking just the most important concepts from our Algebra 1 course, and that will be our Algebra 1 Fundamentals. Okay, so Algebra 1 Fundamentals will have most of the same topics of Algebra 1 CP and Algebra 1 Honors, but it won't go into the depth. It's not going to have quite the difficulty level of the other courses, but we're still hoping to expose our students to the most important concepts of algebra. And so that's basically what we're planning to do for all of those fundamental level classes. So this is a new initiative for us. This year is the first year that we're offering our Algebra 1 Fundamentals class. So we did not offer Integrated 1 this year. Instead, we offered Algebra 1 Fundamentals. But for those students who had already started in the integrated pathway, we had to let them finish it up. So we still do have Integrated 2 this year and Integrated 3. Next year, we will not need Integrated 2, but we will pick up Geometry Fundamentals for the first time next year. And then next year will be the last year that we have our old Integrated 3 program, and then after that, that will get dropped. So this is a big change for us, for what we're doing, but the hope is that it's going to eliminate tracking for students so that you will be able to move more. So, you know, say if you started in Algebra 1 Fundamentals and you did really well, and you want to try to move up to Geometry CP, you will be able to do that. So we're hoping to encourage movement between the levels, and we do see as students mature, you know, maybe as a freshman they're not ready for that CP level, but as they get older and more mature and, you know, realize the amount of work that they have to do to be successful, some of them will be able to move up. So we're excited about that. The last row here is our individual math, and so we do have individual math for both 9th and 10th grade students and 11th and 12th grade students. And then on the bottom is my note about the fact that we're hoping to let students double up if they want to make it to calculus, if they're starting in Algebra 1 instead of an Algebra 2. So a lot of information on this screen, I know. So these are some of our recent initiatives, and I explained the integrated math program to you, the fact that we're not going to be having that anymore. Our other exciting initiative is that we're going to be offering Algebra 2 CP to our freshmen, and we did have about a class worth of freshmen who decided not to take Algebra 1 Honors, but instead they're going to take Algebra 2 CP. So we had, I don't know, a little less than 25 students who opted for that. And they will be mixed in, it won't just be a freshman class of that, they'll be taking that with juniors. A couple other initiatives that we've been working on. We've been working on our curriculum. So we have a PLC for Algebra 1, so where we were developing this new Algebra 1 fundamental class, we have had Algebra 1 fundamentals teachers, Algebra 1 CP teachers, and Algebra 1 honors teachers that get together 3 times a week, and they talk about the curriculum. And so we are making sure that the same curriculum is covered in all 3 classes, but that the difficulty level is appropriate, with the honors class having the most difficult, and the CP as kind of a medium level, and the fundamental is really just the fundamentals of that. Now, we also have a PLC for geometry, because next year is the first time that we're going to offer geometry fundamentals. And so this class has teachers who teach Geometry CP and teachers who teach Integrated 3, and together they're building the curriculum that will be offered for the first time next year. And so it's really starting off with our Geometry CP curriculum, which again, we're picking out just the most important topics. to be put into the geometry fundamentals course. Yes?
What does PLC stand for?
Professional Learning Community.
Okay, thank you.
I say it so often, I don't even...
I knew that's what it was, but I'm like, I'm not in education,
So,
and I don't know what it means.
It's an opportunity for teachers to get together and, look at student work, look at curriculum, whatever it is that we feel needs to be addressed.
Sounds great.
Okay, so some future initiatives. So with the fact that we're introducing this fundamental level course, and we're now going to have our students get through Algebra 1 and Geometry and Algebra 2 by the time they're juniors, we're thinking about offering another course for our fundamental level students. And one of the things that I often read about is the fact that students often get to college and then they have to take remedial math classes. They're paying to take math classes and they're not getting credit for it. So when I look at the curriculums of a lot of other schools, I see that some schools are offering something called Math for College and Career Readiness. And so that is something that I would kind of like to explore as one of the possibilities. So another option that these kids can take. And I hear a lot of our seniors at this time of year talking about the fact that they have to take this AccuPlacer exam for college. And so I'm kind of thinking we need to be looking at that AccuPlacer exam and make sure that these kids have been reminded how to do all of the material that is showing up on that exam. So that would be an example of some of the stuff that we could do in that class. So again, this is not offered yet, but I'm hoping that it can be offered in the near future. Okay, another initiative is our MCAS 2.0, and so the Math MCAS will be starting to be offered in next month, end of May, and so this is the first time that the test is going to be on the computer, the math test. And so we've been doing a lot to prepare for it as a school and as a department, and so in the math department, all of the 10th grade classes, they are doing online practice. There's a practice test that the DESE has put up, and so all of the teachers are making sure that the students have practiced on the Chromebooks and actually looked at this practice test. They're also practicing in class on the content that they're teaching, but by using the computer. So, for example, one of the things that we do a lot of is graphing of lines, and we usually do that on a notebook, on graph paper. So we're making sure that kids know how to use a computer to graph lines, how to use a computer to make a scatter plot. And so the material that we are teaching them anyways, we're trying to make sure that they have practice doing it on the computer. Lastly, we are offering a couple of after-school MCAS prep sessions. So we've looked at the sophomores, we've asked the sophomore teachers which students need some extra help, and we've sent invitations to those families, but this is open to anyone, and so we'll have 3 weeks of practice where different teachers are teaching the different concepts that will show up on the MCAS. More about MCAS. We have access to Edwin Analytics, and so with Edwin Analytics, we can go in and we can look at how our students did last year. And so at the beginning of the year, as soon as those results came out, I did put together a document that has the questions that our students kind of struggled with. And when I say struggled with, like, ideally, I'd love to see our students 20 points above what the state does. And so when I say they struggled with it, maybe they were closer to the number that the state had. So we've highlighted all those questions, put them in one place so teachers can easily go in and see what our students had trouble with. In addition to that, from Edwin, there were students who failed the MCAS, and so I actually printed up the actual test along with how the students answered. You could see how they answered, and that information was given to the classroom teacher and to the special ed teacher so that kids could get some more individualized work before taking the test again. Okay, computer science. So we have 17 math teachers and 1 computer science teacher. And the courses that are listed here are what we teach. A lot of these have honors and CP levels. And so there are about 175 students that take computer science classes each year right now. Some of the courses are only half-year courses. This last one that's listed, game development, is actually not being offered this year because we only have one teacher, so that means, 5 classes. And so there really is kind of more demand than we can handle right now. And, we're hoping in the future to maybe be able to add a part-time position, or as we hear that our population is dropping, possibly taking a math teacher and transferring them over to teach a computer science class if we get to the point where we can do that. Unfortunately, this year we can't. So I have Anthony Zalev here, who's a computer science student, and he has some interesting stuff to share with you guys about what he has done in computer science class. So does anyone have questions before I hand it over to Anthony? Okay. Anthony, you're ready to go.
Hello, everyone. Hi. My name is Anthony Zalev. I'm a senior at Algonquin, and I am the president of the programming club. I've also taken the majority of these classes: computer science principles, computer science A, C++ 1, C++ 2, Python, HTML web design, and game development, and programming with X and A. I have, over my 4 years, a general understanding of how the Department of Computer Science within the Department of Math works and what it teaches. So what computer science teaches above all else is the ability to problem solve. In any language that is taught here, C++, Python, Java, the basic fundamentals are all taught, where we take a problem and we break it down and we learn how to solve it logically, taking a problem that would seem incomprehensible and being able to automate it and make it something that anyone can use. I'm also the president of the programming club, where kids with enthusiasm and a hobby towards this meet every Thursday, where we do competition problems. We've gone to 2 competitions this year, one in Providence, Rhode Island, and one in Fitchburg, where we've placed competitively in both. In both cases, it demonstrates how even in computer science, communication, teamwork, and using strategies from all different directions to solve the same problem is fundamental and shows up so much in the applications of computer science. And the great thing about computer science is it's not just computer science. It's English, it's math, it's science, it's pulling everything together, and it's solving problems that are applicable in the real world. Today I'm going to show you an application that I created for the recent AP that was added, AP Computer Science Principles. This application is a combination of science and chemistry and computer science, where I took acids and bases from chemistry, which I personally was struggling with, and decided that computer science was a way for me to break it down and to be able to see it solved at a fundamental level. So what I've created is an acid-base titrator that also visually shows the titration being occurred while graphing it as well. So I have a demonstration of the video that I made for the project. So this application is created using an app inventor, which is the main focus of mobile CSP. The great thing about App Inventor is it's not your traditional programming language. It's a graph-based, block-based programming language, which is completely unintimidating, and it's focused more on learning the logic versus the syntax of programming, and it opens up computer science and programming to more students who would otherwise be intimidated by looking at lines of code scrolling down the screen. So computer science principles allows any student to create an application that they would otherwise be afraid, hesitate to do in maybe a more traditional language like C++ or Java. So in this application, so this is for your phone. This course also works with Android Studios for more traditional people who want to work with programs. So here, so this is a titration between an acid and a base, and then you can have a base where you add solution, it updates the pH as it occurs, and you can also graph the titration as it's occurring. So, as you can see, this application shows that computer science is not an individual department at Algonquin, but it's an application of what students are learning from everywhere else at the school. And it culminates into tools that other students can use and that students can make that can be helpful for other students even here in high school. Thank you.
Well done.
Any questions for Anthony?
I have a question.
Yes.
How did you find time to take all those courses?
During my freshman year, I took HTML web design. Then during my sophomore year, I ended up taking C++, and then I self-studied C++ 1 while taking the C# XNA game development course. Then as a junior, I took computer science A, and then as a senior, I'm taking Python and computer science principles. So taking these courses is well within the realms of a student who is interested, and all these courses can be taken by students if they're interested.
Thank you, that's very impressive.
Kathleen?
Do you speak any foreign languages?
Any other ones, you mean?
I don't mean
Any other
I mean
ones?
like Spanish, French, Latin, like anything like that?
I have a basic understanding of Russian.
Of Russian? Okay, I'm just trying to figure out how your mind works. Okay.
So, very impressive young man, so thank you for that. That was, I can only imagine the colleges that are vying for you, as well as the corporations or universities after that, where you may end up. So, how about mainframe computing? Have you, do you?
Yeah, so during computer science, in our computer science classes, we have plenty of opportunities that companies throw at us because computer science is short in demand, and a lot of stuff that people want us to do, they just throw at us. So IBM has a program where every fall, Master the Mainframe, where students get to learn a Linux software that emulates how mainframes work, and students can practice programming and moving around the environment that would be typical in a mainframe. So while we don't get direct access to it, we do get an introduction into how something like that would work.
Outstanding. Das Vidania.
John?
Anthony, wonderful job explaining that, so that we who do not take computer sciences, or at least I don't understand it all. Your presentation skills were fabulous. And what I also was impressed, because no matter what computer program you have, there's always a different problem. And to hear you say like that the school is not teaching you just a series of steps, but to problem solve. I mean, that's where, your skills are going to be so successful in the future, is being able to solve problems. So, kudos to you to recognize that and take that into the department to foster that thinking process. That was great.
Any other questions?
Kathleen?
What are your plans and aspirations beyond Algonquin, using all that you've learned here?
I am planning on going to University of Massachusetts Amherst for computer science, hopefully to get a master's degree in computer science before working in industry.
Good luck.
You don't need it. You got this.
Well,
Well,
Thank you.
Well
Thank
done.
you.
thank you for your time.
thank you.
So Beth, before you go up, can I ask a question or two? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Just don't look like she was ready to walk away. I have two. The computer science, the single teacher, and 7 classes, are there kids that graduate from this school that don't get into computer science classes that they want to get into because they just isn't enough room for them, they get bumped, they get waitlisted, or, whatever?
So when we look at our schedule, and we're in the middle of doing scheduling right now, we look at the demand, the classes that students want to take. And I just sat down with Mr. Forehand today, and what we thought about doing is we have to offer the classes that the most students want. But then there were some students who wanted things like exploring computer science, like I think there were 4 kids that wanted that. And so we're not going to be able to run that class, but I asked guidance to give me an actual list of the students, and so we're going to go in and we're going to look at the students and see if we can move some of them. So say if someone wanted an introductory course, maybe we could move them instead to computer science principles was one of the classes that we were thinking about. And so we will try to accommodate students. Will everyone get accommodated? No.
You going to ask for another teacher?
We had that discussion today. Yes. Next year, we're going to ask for another teacher.
And then on the, if I could, on the fundamentals classes, replacing the integrated math classes, is there any concern that maybe the kids that were in integrated math, and we're just kind of getting by, are going to struggle with is the new classes, the new fundamentals, I got the impression they seemed a little more sophisticated. And if so, is that a concern?
We would like it to be a little more sophisticated because the state has the bar set really, really high for that math MCAS, especially the new 2.0 test. It's difficult. So we're trying, these are students who, when you present a concept, they need to do it again, they need to practice it, they need to have a teacher walking around the room telling them, perfect, you did that right. They need a slower pace, and so we're not going to get to everything, but we're hoping that we're still going to be successful. And we always were very successful with the integrated 1 and integrated 2 level kids passing the MCAS. I think we're going to see similar results, although the test is a little harder, so we're going to have to see what happens there. But I think the bar has been raised a little bit in the fundamental level class.
Thanks for your time tonight, by the way.
Thank
You too, Anthony.
I just wanted to say, you mentioned the acuplacer. I know my kids had to take that as well, and I just want to say that when my daughter took it, she was placed in a calculus, it was for whatever calculus class she was supposed to be in, and she only had gone up to pre-calcut.
I believe I had her in pre-calcut.
Yeah, at Algonquin. So she ended up being in the calculus class with engineering students. All her fellow business students were one lower, and she got A's in that class. So, I think our pre-calc classes prepares them very well. And I, too, when she was a freshman, was a little kind of concerned that she wouldn't make it to calculus because I made it to calculus, but I don't really think my calculus was the same calculus they teach now. I think we covered everything I learned in a quarter of a semester, a half of a semester. So, but I'm just, it's just great to see that the kids are being well prepared And they don't even have to be in calculus.
They don't have to be in calculus. And we have Nancy Hart in the back here, who's a fellow math teacher. Nancy's son, Jamie, came through Algonquin, made it as far as pre-calc honors, and then went off to Lehigh, and he is now getting his PhD in material science. This close. This close, Mom. This close. But yeah, your programming's almost done. Yeah, you don't need calculus. You need a strong math background, and we are providing that for them. But I have parents that I can't convince that their kids, that they don't need the calculus, so we're trying to provide.
I know. I would have been one of those too in freshman, but I was proven wrong, so gladly. And she was nervous about being in the class with all these engineers. She was kind of intimidated. She goes, Mom, I never took calculus in high school. But, she got straight A's the whole through, and she did fine.
We'd love to hear that.
So, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Okay, that was great. Love to see those presentations and what the kids really did live. So next we have our MCAS update. Speaking of MCAS.
That segued a little bit into that, previews, I think what Tim was going to share with us tonight, a little bit of a computer update.
Right.
MCAS 2.0 online.
A little bit test coming up. So thank you for having me back, by the way. I was here in November. And when I was here, we talked about, among other things, we talked about the onset of computer-based testing at the high school level for MCAS. So we've had a year and a half or so to start preparing. And so I'm here to report that in late March, we completed our first round of the next generation MCAS testing in English language arts. We tested 394 students on Chromebooks. And in order to do this, we held planning meetings regularly from September to December to start to create a plan to ensure that we could accommodate that many test takers in 2 days of testing. The planning team consisted of myself along with Greg Martineau, Julie Doyle, TJ Karen from the Instructional Technology District-wide team, Brian Callan here at the school, and Susan Whalen. We created a timeline for training our ELA and math teachers, which we did in January, so that they could get ready, familiarized with the TestNav interface, which is what the students use to test, so that they could start to prepare their students in turn. As Beth mentioned, the math teachers, once they were completed with that training, went ahead and started to do the practice test through the TestNav. We also trained all of the 10th grade students with the cooperation of our social studies department. They were great partners in this. They allowed us to come into their classes to do the tutorials for the TestNav interface for those students as well, so then they could go to their English or math classes and start doing the practice testing. Then we prepared our faculty and instructional support staff to be proctors. So we had a training on our PD day, March 11th, to show them all the Pearson Access Next interface, which they use in order to be proctors, to monitor, to be able to see the students' progress, to be able to lock or open up the testing for students. It was definitely a learning curve. Definitely, I think there was you could say a good amount of the faculty who were nervous because it's such a high stakes test and felt like they didn't want to let the students down. So they were essentially, understandably nervous. So we wanted to make sure that we communicated with them well, gave them these trainings so that they in turn could be able to provide the students with a calm environment so that they could then, just worry about answering the questions that they had. So we planned the layout of the testing locations, the location, down to the details of where the Chrome carts are going to be located for spare devices, where the support staff will be located throughout the hallways. We planned and executed a large-scale infrastructure trial, which took place on March 22nd, the week before testing, which, was the exact scale of the test. So we had all the students in all their testing locations, so they got used to where they're going to go the morning of testing, pretty much use the same Chrome cards they would use the following week. They labeled all the cards, so they used the same thing. We had as many of the faculty as we could involved with the infrastructure trial, so they felt comfortable coming in the next week and being able to be proctors in the testing environment, which, as we expected and as we appreciated, there were, of course, things that came up that allowed us to be able to foresee what might come up the following week. And, the instructional technology staff took care of all those issues. So all in all, with all that preparation, all the collaboration, testing went, I think, better than expected. Students were great participants, and I think I mentioned in November, it's in the minutes, I'm sure, but most of our students in 8th grade did computer-based testing already, so the students were fine. They were seeing it essentially again, since they had seen it in middle school. They were very patient with the adults, as the adults navigated for the first time. The faculty were very prepared and helped each other as needed. The support staff on hand were able to handle any request with speed. We had a crew throughout the testing hallways that could answer, were prepared, and knew everything about the interfaces. Were able to help the proctors, the students, so that any glitch that came up, it was smoothed over quickly and students could get to testing. One minor area of need is in the use of our loaner Chromebooks from our Bring Your Own Device program. We had to use our loaner books, take them essentially offline for students for about a week so that we could provide them for the testing, because they needed a few days to get those Chromebooks ready for the infrastructure trial and then keep them in order to use them for the testing. So we hope to possibly avoid this issue starting with next year's testing. So we'll have to talk more about that. So that's kind of the report. I thought it went really well. Thank you to Sarah. She provided a lot of support and time in allowing us to do trainings for the teachers. And again, thank you to Greg and the IT staff. If you have any questions.
Sean.
You made that sound pretty easy and simple. It is a nightmare, I'll just say. In the back end, to organize, it's really hard. So whoever, whether that was you or whatever, what you need to understand is every child needs to be entered, and if they have any accommodation at all, it needs to be clicked pretty much manually or through spreadsheets. And so the teachers are doing quite a bit, but on the back end, there's a lot. So
That's Tim.
So that's really impressive. 300 plus students to be able to do all that. I appreciate all that work.
We definitely had a big learning curve to tackle.
Yeah.
Luckily, because it's been done at the middle school level, we had TJ Karen, who, with his crew, have been doing it for years in the middle school level.
But just
which has been great, but our staff here, brand new to it, so we kind of started in September saying, with basically a clean slate, let's get this going.
Just that PAN interface, though, and trying to manage hundreds of kids is quite an undertaking. So kudos to you for doing that so successfully.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, it sounds like a huge endeavor, and hopefully the preparation we have now, we won't need each year, will get easier and easier as we go along.
Looking forward to next year.
Well, I think you might want to relax from this year for a little bit. But thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next is our recap of town meetings.
Northborough Town Meeting this week, Monday and Tuesday, 2 evenings, 2 successful evenings, 2 successful, almost unanimous, except for one student who had his hand up last night in Northborough's vote. It was a difficult challenge for Northborough, given their assessment numbers and so forth, but I think the town was incredibly supportive and passed, I would say, with one less vote, unanimous, and as did some other warrant articles that we had that were fairly sizable for Northbridge to upgrade. Safety and security in all of our K-8s passed as well. K-8 in region. So we have an approved FY20 budget, and we are starting to upload that in 2 weeks. So we'll be ready for the FY20 season. And I think one of the high points of the second night was filled with citizen petition articles. But much like we heard Anthony this evening, and in a similar way, with great passion, commitment, poise, and really communication and presentation excellence, we had a representative, Shariva Tanakella, present two significant articles that will actually be impactful for our K-8s slightly, and also the region. Articles 36 on plastic bag reduction bylaw. It's a process and an undertaking that they've been involved with, students here from Algonquin, and the president of the Northborough-Southborough Rotary Interact, which is Shariva, and also participants of the Green Earth Club, presented it just in stellar fashion, standing O for that young lady, even though folks didn't necessarily agree with the article. Everyone who stood up to the mic said, I don't agree with this, I'm gonna keep my plastic bags, I'm not going with paper, but young lady, you are outstanding. And so that was just tremendous. And that passed overwhelmingly, in part of, and mostly because of the work of this young lady, her fellow students here at Algonquin, and it was really an amazing moment. That representation of who she is and what Algonquin has done to provide her with these opportunities, but to prepare her for such a challenging moment, far outweighed any of the budget presentations I could have presented on Monday. And then again, another article, Article 37, which is a citizen petition article, which was similar environmental concerns to pass a polystyrene reduction bylaw. Both passed. And same comments from the audience. And it was an extensive discussion, and for a young lady who is a sophomore to participate in that process, to engage in the question and answering, was just amazing. It's probably better than any YouTube download you may have the chance to see over the next couple days. So I would encourage you to take a look at what our students do. And again, just another fine representation, as was Anthony this evening. What that means to us, given that Algonquin is here in Northborough and our elementary schools, is an adjustment in how we serve and offer our cafeteria options, what we serve them on. And so for Algonquin, and because our cafeterias have been sort of morphing into paper, plastic, recyclables for some time, the cost is about a $5,000 increase. It is something that we can absorb in the cafeteria budget here at the high school without any need at this point for an increase in lunch. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the budget section. But just a very successful night, and I think the message that we as a school, in providing these opportunities for students to have their voices heard and to follow their passion, and to support their concern about our environment, was tremendous, however we feel about that individually or as a committee, but also to have that resounding support from the community, I think really sends a very strong message to our students that we encourage you to be civic-minded. We talked about that earlier with the trip to DC, and to follow what you believe is right, and others will as well. So it was just a fantastic experience to see and to be part of, and, you know, kudos to everyone who attended and supported that work.
So, you know, I've been on the operational budget subcommittee for years now. I mean, I think this, you know, these budgets passing as they passed, you know, is a reflection of the fact that the citizens, the taxpayers of both towns, see what the administration does to try and maximize the educational value for, you know, while really kind of watching, you know, the dollars as well as we watch the dollars. We create a great product here, we put out a terrific education, and yet, you know, we do it mindfully of the cost to the taxpayer. taxpayers, and I think the taxpayers in both towns have recognized that, and, it gets reflected in the fact that, these votes go as well as they do. I think part of it is because the administration has gone as far out of their way as they have in the last several years, too, to keep the financial folks involved in both towns, aware of what we're doing, why we're doing it, where we're going with the monies and stuff. There are no surprises anymore. We've had a few really great town meetings in a row, and that'd be a terrific thing to continue to maintain. There have been years in the past that were not quite so great. So kudos to you guys for putting terrific budgets together, and kudos to the taxpayers in both towns for recognizing it and appreciating it and approving it. So I think we should be on record with that.
And I'd also like to mention that at the beginning of John Cordero, the town administrator, doing his article for the town budget, he also mentioned Christine Johnson and the working collaboration and cooperation between them, and he even went over part of the budget, and, just to see how the schools work together and what the K-8 was going to be and what the regional was. And even before that even happened, they always do awards to people that have served on the different boards, and they get a wonderful plaque from the selectman and the town administrator, and Christine was so honored for the service that she's given to Northborough in her time. And when it did come to the time of doing the presentations, Christine did such a fantastic job on the assessments that I think through her wisdom through the years, that it was always like a scary animal, like, what is that assessment? Why is the budget 3%, but then you're only going up by 2.74, but how come the assessment is 9, and how do we get to it? But you explained it so well to the town that there aren't any questions about the confusion of what it has been for years. So I think it's kudos to Christine and her administrative staff to explain it so well that they have such a good understanding of it that there aren't any questions that come up because of it. And also I'd like to thank those members that serve on the operational and the capital, the time that you give to help to understand that. And also when that assessment number comes in, it's not in October, it's like in January, February, and then you have to start working with it and the staff. So I think it was a wonderful presentation, and those 2 articles last night about the student, and I think it was also a teacher from here who is a advisor for the students into that not study group, but a committee that they work with. That was Jeannie Cahill.
Jeannie Cahill, yeah.
Jeannie
She's
Cahill.
a member of the, I think the Conservation Committee, or a liaison to one of the committees in Northborough. Yeah.
But the student, if you ever get to watch it, go to the second night, and the student was so eloquent, and kudos from everybody saying what a great speaker, and look to have those students in town government in future years to come. They were just so eloquent in their presentation, their PowerPoint, and a lot of support from their fellow students that were also in the audience. So thank you to everybody for such a successful Northborough town meeting as there was in Southborough a couple weeks ago.
Kathleen?
I was with Jeannie Cahill and those students on Monday night as they too sat blurry-eyed as the night continued, and it was clear that it was not going to be addressed that evening. And what I saw was this model of efforts in the community matched with the clubs here at Algonquin, because I know that they took the time to go and sit and listen to concerns that various restaurants and businesses in the community were going to have. They didn't just put out their message, but they sat and listened, and it was one by one that they gained that support. And so I thought the lessons right around for an intergenerational civic engagement was really quite impressive to me. And it was my pleasure to meet those students that night.
Just the whole citizen petition process, too. You're building the support and of that, you kind of think off the hand that that's going to be part of it, but it's not. There's certain requirements for a citizen petition also, like that has to go before legal counsel in the town. So I think that's a really big learning experience for the students that were involved in that, and any person who goes through that process of putting up a citizen petition. But to start so young and not, like, be intimidated and just to go through that process, because that plastic bag was on the warrant last year, and they withdrew it because they wanted to make sure that it was in line with everything else, other bylaws the town might have, and, probably have those conversations with the merchants and so forth. So, I think the whole process it's really impressive. So, Dan.
I think that's exactly right. It's really that preparation that someone has, and to do a citizen petition is not easy.
Right.
We had a number of them in Southborough, and then it would go on for 45 minutes, and the person would receive one vote. And you could, but then you have others that do incredible amounts of, not only preparation, but gathering support, which is the hardest part. Going to those meetings, meeting with, constituents, meeting with businesses, trying to really, it's a great learning opportunity and great opportunity to participate in the democratic process and do it in a way that, ends up being really fruitful at the end too, is great. Again, kudos on the budget. It wasn't held in Southborough for I think the second year in a row. That is a real demonstration of, it wasn't.
It's been 4 or 5 years in a row.
All right, at least, okay, 5 years in a row. But it really goes to show the level of preparation that goes into it, and that buy-in from the Finance Committee, which I believe is what it's called in Northborough, the Advisory Committee in Southborough, the great relationships that you've had with leadership in both towns, I think is incredible. And then, how that gets out to the community so that they see these budgets well in advance and know, what's coming. So there aren't any questions when it comes to town meeting, and it goes incredibly smooth for such a large, budget item. So very well done. And, your leadership is shown through, and Greg, good luck.
He's gonna. No problem.
Tough act to follow.
Okay, that's great news all around. So next we have the superintendent's reports to committee.
Sarah. Speaking of tough act to follow, thank you for the opportunity. So I continue to come in at 4 pages, and I will try my very best. I know it says March, don't let that fool you. Our seniors wouldn't have it any other way. We are definitely in April. So I apologize in advance for the typo. Quick update on our match competitions. We held them here earlier in March, and I just think it's really great to go ahead and showcase our student successes. The jazz one earned a silver medal. That's no easy task. Really true testament to fine and performing arts. And for our jazz students, it can be cross-curricular at times where they might be in orchestra or another chorus and then move to perform in that jazz one. Our National English Honor Society, you will see 3 or 4 updates on them. They were very, very busy, but I wanted to point out some of their community, we were talking about civic tonight, work where they go and do book discussions at some of our, with some of our local senior residents, and recently discussed one of the interesting books. It's just great to see that positive community connection, application of skills that you get in school, building of networking just come to life into fruition. Towards the bottom, we had, speaking of town managers, we had Mr. Gadair here at Algonquin, and he is working on a new initiative that Ms. Rufo's class has started, Money Talk segment. What's fun about this is that they're working with Mr. Hansen's Video 2 class, so now you have 2 different classes working together on the same concept, but through different forms of curriculum, where they're going ahead to video it and showcase it to really get into the details about management and leadership, and students have developed this process. So that was very exciting work. Under activities and clubs, there's a host of successes across multiple clubs. And what's funny is I didn't know that Anthony was coming here to present tonight. He is smack dab in the middle of that picture, smiling ear to ear. As one of the winners when they were talking about the Fitchburg State University programming competition, truly enjoys what he does, and he inspires his peers to want to join him in these fun competitions. And they do their own school-based inter-competitions to kind of continue with their peers, getting more interested in it and breaking down the barrier, the scariness I think you referenced about computer science. Towards the bottom, I wanted to give a shout out to Mr. Barry and Student Council. They have the blood drive coming up, I think tomorrow, but they've also continued their annual food drive. And this is something that some teachers make it fun competitions, some do it different ways, some connect it to the curriculum, but at the end of the day, everybody's involved in sharing this act of kindness and giving back to their community. And it's great to see that he brings it back. I think there's a competition for 1,000 boxes of cereal. I don't know how close that they've come, but that is a lot of cereal. Towards the bottom, I wanted to point out our chemistry Olympiad students were competing in the Framingham State University All-State Competition. This is months of work and collaboration and creativity, and you've seen some pictures in the past of where it's kind of that top-down shot where you see the different projects that they're working on. They performed very, very well, and I've listed on the second page some of their placements and what they did, but most importantly, those students, they take it beyond that work. They're involved in our Science National Honor Society. They're involved in peer-to-peer mentorship, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. I had the opportunity to work with some of them yesterday in going to one of our local schools and judging a science fair contest and making a positive peer-to-peer connection with a middle school student, but then networking with all the other science judges in there and creating that connection and application of their work, as well as advancing their own careers and skills. Our Harbinger produced one of its longest print issues most recently, and this isn't printed in there, but we approved their field trip to go to the Columbia Scholastic Association Press 95th convention. Out of over 1,000 online print submissions and print submissions, they received the second highest award, which was silver. And our Harbinger, yes, is what we produce, but there's more to that. There's coursework associated with this. There's club work associated with this. We have multiple advisors. Sachem works with Harbinger, and there's some cross-work there, working through the arts, working through poetry, working through the literature. And just to have them, be rewarded and showcased on all of their amazing work, it's honorable to be a part of that opportunity in the students and the work that they do. I can't get away without saying junior prom is May 18th at Union Station. I just need to keep reminding my juniors to get done what they want to do. They're very excited about prom. There's a lot of steps that have to go into place. Some positive conversations I'll get to in a couple minutes about a speaker we had to come to address some of those difficult choices that come with prom night, but I do have to say that prom is May 18th. Under sports, when this went for print, we were just kind of starting the March season. It was very, very rainy. We had weeks where we had to push back game openers, but Algonquin rallied as they always do, very creative with the spaces that we have if the fields weren't in use, and we had many successful game openers, multi-wins. Cheerleaders had a successful, wonderful event at their nationals in Atlanta, Georgia. What a great opportunity for them to expand their competition. Unified track, this is our first year that we are our own team. In previous years, we were with Westboro. We got to the point last year where both teams could create their own individual team and be sustainable. So they've grown. We have 34 team members with the 14 athletes and 18 partners, and students choose to, practice that inclusivity at every level. Very successful start, and you have a picture of them being very creative as they were rained out on one of their track days, but it's exciting to see Algonquin always rally and always find a creative, innovative way to continue to expand our understanding and concept of what it means to be an athlete, what it means to be an artist, what it means to be a journalist, and finding that niche at Algonquin. Towards the bottom, Boosters is so supportive of everything we do here at Algonquin, as well as our parents and our community members, that I wanted to put a reminder in for their golf outing, which is Tuesday, June 18th, always a successful event, and they do that to bring the community together to support the athletics here at Algonquin. Under science, I was a part of this curriculum work, and what's fun about this is to see our educators incorporate different levels of Bloom's taxonomy and where you are on the creative scale across different content areas, incorporating art, incorporating engineering, incorporating a little bit of programming. And so in physics, through some app work and through some grant work, they were able to make their own circuits, test their circuits, and do different overlays with their circuits. Then they showcase these and share these and then practice presenting them out to their peers. Just a fun event, but more importantly, they received that critical peer-to-peer feedback and helped grow their own project work to have those successes. Under applied arts, robotics is at it. They had 12 different qualification matches, and out of all of that work, they were third out of 40 teams in their most recent competition. And we got to see robotics here, so it's always fun to get that update after you get to see live time what's going on with their robot that year. For fine arts, Micah, very successful. I've listed all of it. Silver, bronzes, came home. Most importantly, the students enjoyed being at the venue. It was a Friday, Saturday event, and it just gave them the opportunity to perform and just continue in their artistic endeavors that give them that one additional characteristic that they can showcase here at Algonquin and be rewarded for. I alluded to this before. I'm jumping down to guidance. We had Kara Filler here, internationally recognized speaker, was brought to us through the supports, through donations, through PTO support and the Worcester County DA's office. The speaker takes a very difficult situation that she encountered in her younger years and makes it very real for our students to access those difficult situations. And we were able to bring it to both our freshmen and juniors. And the why behind that was to make sure that we were giving our juniors this critical information before prom. That we're always faced with difficult choices. We need skills on how to do risk refusals, what we do in difficult situations. And some of the juniors came out of this, and the qualitative feedback I received was they left the presentation feeling that they had gained life-saving skills and tactics that went far beyond Algonquin and into future years. And the freshmen reported the same skill set that they gained, and we were able to capture them at an earlier 2 years and continue that growth. So thank you to those that made the donations and made Kara available to Algonquin. Thank you to all of our parents who supported this, and to our freshman and junior classes who took this work and applied it in their daily lives. And then towards the bottom of the fourth page, Tim did a wonderful job capturing all the work that it took, but it really was a village. And I just want to reiterate a thank you to Tim, a thank you to Greg, a thank you to the district instructional technology team about MCAS, Brian Calnan, newer in the position, and Sue. The infrastructure day that we experienced here, everything went wrong, which was awesome, because then we could learn from it, and it just helped us take that moment of angst and channel it and come up with solutions, so that day that we did MCAS was very successful days that we did it. That's coming up very quickly for English, or sorry, for math, as Beth explained. And what some individuals aren't aware of, we are also piloting Science 2.0. So our students are still taking the written exam, but in addition to that fun work, Tim is handling almost an extra test this year, because he also, and you alluded to this, all the entering of each one of the students on the PAM interface and how it works. So not only do you have to do all of that fact checking for the written exam, we're doing it for the Science MCAS 2.0 kind of experimental exam. So what we did at Algonquin is we came together, the science department chair, the science teachers, we came together and we realized, okay, our students are going to be taking this written exam. It's going to be their third MCAS exam for that year. And then they're going to be taking a fourth exam to do this online testing. Testitis is basically what's going to happen. And so we have agreed, and we've messaged this to our parents, that we're going to take a different format for our biology final exam, so that our students can kind of do that project-based approach and not necessarily be sitting again in front of a final exam. And I just really commend the innovativeness of the biology teachers and understanding. Yes, we understand we need to do these check boxes, and we understand we need to prepare for what's coming down the road, but what can we do at the school to push our curriculum and how we assess students and support them through the process. So I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for all of those that were involved in it, and that the work actually continues as they advance this process. Thank you.
That's, as always, a fun, fact-filled, impressive presentation. Kathleen?
Two things. One, I would love to get the Harbinger when we come. I saw you had one. And secondly, I wonder about all the testing, as you noted. That is really significant. And the buildup of performance or test anxiety, and what mitigations there are also in place to let people do their best and let their best be good enough, but not to be setting expectations and creating a snowball effect. So as a college professor, I see such remarkable test anxiety, and anxiety and depression around it, that I'm wondering how we balance that with other resources.
So that's kind of a two-part question for me. So the first part question is, some of that test anxiety comes from the unknown, and then when you move from a written test to this online format, it almost exacerbates that anxiousness of the unknown. And we were really proactive this year, educators, Tim, the work we did about professional development, in exposing our students while not adding additional work. And you heard Beth speak to this. How do we teach the same content but in a new, innovative way so that we are developing those computer-based skills, we're developing those problem-solving skills without adding additional work or anxiousness or test performance? So that was done way back in September, and it kind of had its slow build so that teachers themselves could process it, digest it, and then present it in a way for students. Some of the fun things that they did, and I really do mean the word fun, so it doesn't have to feel like this oppressive testing concept, is just the use of various applications and how to get that done through maybe the iPad cart and how we leverage the Chromebooks. The use of Canvas to say, like, here's a different way to look at math or English or science online in the curriculum so that you're accessing different student strengths while exposing them to different aspects of how the test works. I will say that something the leadership team does here at Algonquin is we have those cross-curricular conversations where we say, you know, we're coming up on, let's say, AP exams, or we're coming up on math, MCAS. What can we do cross-curricular so that when we start assigning assignments or homework or long-term work, that we can maybe relieve some pressure and stresses elsewhere so that students feel like they can focus more on something that they may be nervous about. So we're trying to create that balance. Not always perfect, right? And it's very specific for each individual student, but I think that those healthy cross-curricular conversations where, for example, if I was a math teacher, I didn't assign 500 problems the night before the English MCAS. It's just that awareness that our students need that break. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, I can hear it in the technology and curriculum. I'm also looking for like mindfulness resources or meditation or exercise, which are true stress busters. So I love trying to make that more seamless, but I'm also looking at the possibility, and I have books of research about it, and I found it surprisingly impressive and much more advanced than I guessed.
So we have, as formal as you speak, I can't say that we're there yet about those. School-wide, I know that prior to my arrival, there's some excellent mindfulness training, professional development. You will see that in pockets at Algonquin. We have some great student-based initiatives, for example, the pet therapy that I talk about here in the report, and creating those spaces for students to take those breaks. That's definitely happening. School-wide, that's a goal that we are working towards, that mindfulness, that de-stress, that moment to just say the day doesn't have to feel that stressed.
That's great. Thank you.
Just a quick, like a heads up more than anything else. In the athletics section, there's a line that says that we're pre-planning to add a strength and conditioning coach next year. When it comes time to prepare the budgets, you know, I'm thinking about a computer science teacher versus a strength and conditioning coach, and I'm going to be, you know, I suspect that'll be a reasonably difficult hurdle, but, you know, we want to certainly make sure that we know what we're doing there, and it just, staff ads get so tough, and this looks like a staff ad being planned for next year that, you know, we'll want to make sure that the AD's pretty well prepared with his arguments when he shows up with this.
And in discussion with Mike, it wasn't, it's kind of similar to what we did with hockey, where we overlaid a JV1, JV2, so that it wasn't something where we had to do an actual staff ad. It was a way to give students more opportunity. So he didn't present it to me as a higher strength and conditioning coach, but that's definitely good feedback.
It looks like, it reads like it's higher in some. But anyway, I love this, you know, this part of the school committee meeting every single month. There's always such great news to be shared and stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we have, before that, we have things on the packet about the end of year schedule.
Senior schedule.
Senior schedule, and then the overall end of year schedule. Does anyone have any questions on that, on those two things? Okay, so so move on to enrollments.
Equally exciting, not in color, but in black and white, which is always good with numbers. So we have the enrollments for the current school year and also projections for next year. I would just note that Beth made a comment about enrollment declines and things of that nature. We talk a lot about that at the K-8 level, particularly in one community or over the other at the middle school level, because we're sort of catching up at the middle school with the reductions that have been occurring over the K-8 in Northborough. In this case, because of discussions with the town administrators, we're carrying both incoming ninth grade classes at 100% of current enrollment. We know that that does fluctuate. From, Northborough, it's typically somewhere between 95 and 100% of the incoming freshman class. In Southborough, it's somewhere between more like 85 to 95%. So I think some of that references to the reality of the changes in the incoming class as they move from 8th to 9th grade. So these are current projections moving forward with the current 100% of the 8th graders. Just wanted to point that out. A couple things about the FY20 budget, and it's not necessarily noted here, but I think it's good information to share and good news to be heard. Last month when we presented the approved, or asked for the budget to be approved, we talked about seizing opportunities when they present themselves, and that's oftentimes how we're able to put programs in or how to add additional staff. And there was some questions from the audience about, well, when are we going to put this or that back in the budget? And my comment at that time was, we vote a budget at a point in time, but that budget is fluid as soon as that budget is voted. Prior to town meeting, and not too soon before, we learned that we had a staff member who was moving on, and one of the ways that we are also able to put new positions or to increase our resources, or particularly in the area of technology, is to capture savings when that happens. And we do that with retirements, and we do that with transitions that occur throughout the year. 3 other things have happened in a very short period of time that could be very impactful for the regional district. The first is, for all intents and purposes, 2 of the 3 are likely to occur. The first is regional transportation is now at 72%, I believe, which is the highest I've seen that. But there is a good likelihood that that's going to increase, which is phenomenal. Again, I'll ask Greg how the story ended in July, but because that's when the governor's budget typically is approved.
I'll call you.
Thanks, but I'm changing my cell, we talked about that. And my email's already changed. So we also then talked about circuit breaker. Circuit breaker is at an all-time high. It's about 71%. Projections are that that's going to change as well, up. And Chapter 70, and as I approached John Kadir Monday night, I said, and you do know that if Chapter 70 goes up, we get the money this time. And so consider it a parting gift, but consider it a new practice, perhaps. But with all those things in play, and the shift in staffing, and one of the other great things about being a regional district is that the regional high school is the fiscal agent for a lot of our grants. That doesn't mean the regional high school gets all the money. It gets an allocation of a grant. A particular grant in mine is 94-142, which funds, it's a federal grant, which funds most of our aides and most of our, our support personnel. Because we have the ability to facilitate the expenditure of that grant, we also see when there's reductions in the grant that allow us, reductions because of staff changes, that allow us to stay within our allocation, but to move people, as you've heard me request, on and off grants, depending on how the budget season is. And that's helped us move pieces of folks on to operational and sometimes off of or on to a grant. What does all that mean to Algonquin? With all of those factors in play, and the reductions that we had presented when we talked about the, or requested approval of the FY20 budget. We had a .8 health and fitness teacher. And again, Beth alluded to this. One of the challenges for a high school is that our budget's approved before the scheduling is done. So determining things like sections, and that's in flux. So we had a 0.8 health and PE reduction, and we know that all of our students, because of state law, we dealt with this years ago, have to take joyfully a semester of PE each of the 4 years they are enrolled. We had administrative reductions, which was not clearly articulated in terms of whether it was an assistant principal or whether it was an administrative support person. We left that up to the good judgment of the building principal, of course. We had a 0.4 FTE reduction and a 1 in art, and a 1.0 reduction in world language. All of that sounds like it amounts to a lot of money, and in the aggregate it is, but some of these pieces, because they were positions that we are going out for, in other words, the art position was an opening because someone retired. That retiree, we captured the savings by anticipating what level, what step and years of service they would be hired in to Algonquin. So the good news is as follows. Is that enough build-up for the... Sarah, I don't have the color, so I've got to work this. Is we are able to put a 0.5 health and wellness teacher back in the budget, and those classes were filled. So this is not of the good graces of, returning. It is a position who will be hired in half-time, which means I don't believe they're benefit eligible, so there's a little bit savings there, not sure. We are able to, because we carried some of that funding for the administration in the approved FY20 budget, to put the other pieces that were going to be reduced back, and that's Sarah's call how that is going to look. But to return our administrative reductions to full power, I just screwed off, and also to put in that 0.4 FTE, which brings us back to a 1.0. So I think the bottom line is being ever watchful and mindful of all the factors in play, and seizing them when they come about allows us to do what we do. This is not, wow, this year, we've done this in other years. That's how we were able to put in an assistant principal. People left, we had shifts in employment, and when we left our FY20 budget approval meeting in March, we did discuss, and my response to the parent in the audience was that our goal is always to return teachers to the classroom, because we know that's almost 90% of the time more important than anything else that we can add back for our kids. So I'm pleased that this has happened. I do not believe that we are able to go to that 1.0 world language, but enrollment still suggests, historically and current, that we do not have the students to necessarily fill classes that are consistent with our expected class size policy. However, we do know that we have been very mindful about retaining and not expending when times were tight, to follow our vision of adding a language back in, or adding a language that we've never offered. Anthony mentioned he sort of knows Russian. I think he sort of knows computer science. I will never say the budgeting process is complex again after he did it. I wanted to say, okay, you win. That's far more complex than the budgeting process. But, when that started 3 years ago, we made a conscious decision to invest in our future, and that future was expanding our world language program and to offer some new offerings and maintain not only our competitiveness with the expectations of post-secondary, but also other high schools in the area, and to sort of bank those funds. We're at a position, or at a point right now, where we could conceivably, if enrollment was possible, offer a 0.5 of, I think the discussion was always Mandarin or Russian, two languages we've never been able to offer our students, and half-time position. There are enough funds to maintain that for at least 2, if not 3 years, depending on at the rate at which we hire, and then build that into the operational budget over time. But that's a discussion that is, at the building level, but that's there. So all of that is a far better picture than the last time we saw it.
Good news.
Yeah, that's good news.
Very good.
That was unanimous? Okay. But I also think it shows the fluidity of, what we're able to do. I just also wanted to comment about the Chromebook shortage, or the loaner, having to call in the loaner Chromebooks. In this budget, we did recognize the importance of looking at our one-to-one, our blended learning model, and looking at that from the lens of not only having accessible, reliable Chromebooks for our students to use to support the blended learning model that was approved, but also to make sure that we had enough available devices during MCAS without having to be concerned about borrowing or having loaners that aren't returned. So that's all good news. Expenditure report is in your packet. Also good news. We are tracking this budget very closely. This approval was the first year we did not give back assessment dollars to our towns, which is going to really help our E&D position. And I'm actually very pleased where we are right now in our operational budget for this time in the fiscal year. So we are over 200 at this point, still remaining in our operational budget.
So I would move that we accept until audited the statement of revenue dated March 31st, 2019, and the monthly general fund expenditure report dated March 31st, 2019.
Second.
And seconded by Dan Calendar. Any opposed? Yes.
So I have one question on the revenue report. I'm pretty sure I asked it last month, too.
You did, and I'm ready.
I mean, we're at 61% of $350,000 athletic receipts. We're not, there's no big-ticket athletic events happening in April and May, I don't think, that's going to make up that
We won't.
135,000 shortfall.
We won't make 100%, but here's a couple good pieces of information. We do have a very large deposit that was just made. We do deposits online, and we also do, just checks that come in and so forth. But the majority of that is online deposits. And I know A.D. Masarino and Sue have been really watching over those online deposits. So I suspect this number next month will be closer to 75% of collection, based on the conversations with respect to that. We also, Mike's doing an incredible job expending his budget. Last year, we rolled into the year with, on the plus side, in our athletic revolving, and while that number may not reach 100% receipts, we still have some remaining athletic funds that will roll forward into FY20, which will somewhat offset this, because these are revolving funds. So we're being mindful of that as we budgeted this, not only for the revolving funds for next year, but also the operational budget. So, but yes, you are correct, we will not hit 100.
Is there any trend or reason why it would have been somewhat short?
No trend, it's just, it's 1 year, so I think the trend will, as we watch it next year.
We always have no trouble making it, so I was just wondering if there was something that happened or some event that we didn't have.
According to Sue, no monumental, pivotal moment. I think last year we may have had a couple football night games that increased our gate receipt. Gate receipts is a huge part of collections, and so gate receipts are dependent upon sometimes who's playing what and how the what is doing. So that has some variability, and I believe this year was the year of the freeze-out for the Thanksgiving game as well. So that
Oh,
caused some
right,
problems with the
right,
gate
right,
receipts.
right.
So those two alone are factors in, not necessarily the fees, but then the gate receipts piece.
Okay, nope, just curious.
And we've been talking a lot about, all year long, about voting until audited, and what does that mean? The audit is in the
I
packet.
don't think we voted on.
Oh, shucks.
We voted this
There you
yet,
go.
just a motion. Okay, all those in favor?
Thanks, Paul. I was so anxious to answer your
I know,
question.
I get it, I get it,
All
I get it.
penciled in. It came in strong.
I hate being
with-
predictable like that.
I know. So the audit for FY18 is in your packet. The audit subcommittee did meet with Tom Scanlon. Christine Tegg has done an amazing job as our regional treasurer. And we did have the privilege of having Christine present when we met with with Tom Scanlon from Scanlon and Associates. This is his third year of auditing our books. And I know Lynn and Paul were both present.
Yep, it was, you know, very, what they call is a clean audit. Everything was fine. They had just, you know, a few minor suggestions with the cafeteria funds. And then also just, you know, they typically looking forward into future accounting statements, which in government is called GASB. You know, but nothing really to, you know, worry about.
No, it was terrific. I mean, there were no deficiencies listed, there were no material weaknesses listed. There were a couple of suggestions of things that could be tightened up a little bit. I was like, okay, thanks very much. It was terrific.
Yeah, what was, I was trying to make sense of that. There was one I saw with the food services. I was like, I didn't understand that.
The food service,
In this, you talked about how some of the funds flow through the regional, does like Northborough and Southborough use the same pay?
Northborough and Southborough to the region.
Yeah, use the
They're
same,
separate K-8 budgets.
so they don't use the same collection for
Food?
For food services?
That is the citations,
Right.
or the recommendation.
Oh, okay,
But the
okay.
problem is when the 8th graders transfer up
Transfer.
to 9th grade.
Because they're
So
different, okay.
That had, we instituted some practices last summer that addressed some concerns about how they were inconsistently
Okay.
rolling up, and I think that was addressed in this report.
Okay.
And the other thing that we instituted last year was the need to collect debt at the end of each fiscal year, and not allowing it to roll into the next school year. So if a family has a $150 balance due in June, that is a debt, and it needs to be collected and not rolled forward.
Yeah.
And, you know, we paid for the food that was eaten.
Yeah.
And so you can't assume that it's going to catch up with you in the next fiscal year. So we've addressed that. And this year, the letters are going out early in June to make sure that all those collections are made. Because the cafeteria is self-sustaining unless it cannot sustain. And then it looks to the operational budget because we have to balance. We can't go into it with a debt. Yeah, I had mentioned to the school committee that I think it's critical for any outgoing superintendent, and more so for any incoming superintendent, to inherit clean, audited accounts. So in the last 3 or 4 years, we've had our student activities account audited. Our funds are audited every year. And we've authorized a cafeteria audit this year. It's going well. It's the same firm that's familiar with our district. Preliminary information has been presented, no concerns around the fiscal issues, around, you know, managing a very complex cafeteria structure. So that's good, but there's always ways we can improve. It's been very validating in terms of the suggestions that are coming forward through the audit. She's done pretty much a 10-year analysis. It's not done. It was presented to us in draft format. And Clifton Larson and Allen are coming to the district Monday just to have conversations with Kyle Parson, with all of the managers, to talk about maximization of commodities, maximization and efficiencies around menu planning, all good conversations. And when this year ends, you will have a clean cafeteria audit. So, there you go. And we usually vote to accept the audit, right?
Yes.
I think so.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, switching it up. Okay, moved by Dan, seconded by Paul. I saw you trying to catch that in quick.
Saw the hesitation.
All right, any questions or comments, discussion?
Just one last thing, I mean, I think, our new treasurer has been terrific, and our new auditors have been terrific, and between the two of them, I mean, they've just cleaned this up wonderfully, and, it's been a terrific partnership there. She should be applauded for that.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
She's great. And she did that refinancing too.
The bond last year.
So that was good. And alerted us to that, so.
I also just want to give a nod to the financial coordinators. I mean, they manage their districts, the green, the blue, and the yellow, as if it were their home budgets. And they do an amazing job, and they're very much committed to the work. We've had some shifts in Northborough for one reason or another, and we have a stellar coordinator right now managing Northborough, Caroline Willard. Elaine Dayco is our Northborough coordinator. Caroline Willard is just amazing and has the most complex budget, which is the regional budget. And Pam Height has been with us for over 20 years, I think. So it's just a great trio, and it's fun to go over there. It's very calm, it's very purposeful, and they actually laugh a bit too, which makes the day go by.
Okay. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Next on the agenda is nothing under old business, so policy development and/or distribution. So we have the second reading of our new advertising, donations, and sponsorships policy. And we got the policy subcommittee met again, go over some of the changes and feedback that we received.
So a couple additions since it was reviewed by the committee. The first is it's been to legal counsel and reviewed by legal counsel. So the red line copy, you'll see legal counsel recommendations. And in addition to that, we also added crowdfunding to the policy, as that was another area for potential resources in the future. And although this is the second read of the second read, the recommendation is to actually give it some more time and to review and bring it back to the next school committee meeting. So it's well vetted, well reviewed, and any comments can be brought back, sent to Nancy Bissett or myself.
Have we done any, I guess, outreach, right? Have we, I know we've discussed it with boosters. Have we discussed it with PTO or SEF, NEF, or the music and art people? It would be better to get their, initial...
That's an excellent suggestion.
What if, rather than wait until we've approved it. And then they say, well, what if I want to do this?
Yeah, we do this all the time.
Right, exactly. And I just realized at the last policy subcommittee meeting, we didn't talk about that because we were so
Focused on
the changes, yeah.
I'll definitely outreach to those groups and get some feedback.
Good suggestion. Okay, so we also we had approved some policies prior meetings, so we have the approved policies in your packet, which you can put in. Did everyone get, because we have some new members, has everyone got that binder with the policies?
Wait, I don't, but
So,
There's an election coming, so
yeah.
whether it's
So we will
me or
have-
another person.
Nancy Bissett prepare an extra binder.
Okay, so Kathleen, you had not received
I
one.
don't believe so.
Most of the policies
It's all
are
online.
online.
I have the binder and I never ever use it because you can search it online, so.
I have the binder and it's out of date.
Right,
So I go
yeah.
online.
I'm fine going online.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure everyone is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Going online's better.
All right. So these are the policies. I still have my binder, I replaced them. Okay. Haven't hit the 21st century yet. All right, so any audience sharing? I see no audience except our camera person. Any committee members have any audience sharing? Joan?
I have one thing to share, and I don't know if Sarah may want to add on to it, but there was an article that was in the Northborough Patch on April the 4th, and the title was Algonquin Regional High School Gets Post-Prom Party Grant. And that was awarded by the District Attorney, Joseph Early, and they made grants to 16 schools in a total of $20,000, I guess, divided among the 16 schools. But I thought that was a great effort, and I don't know whether whoever wrote the grant, if it was the PTO who did it or something, but Algonquin's going to be receiving money for it. And a quote here from District Attorney Joe Early said, "I'm so proud that our office is able to support Algonquin Regional High School in their efforts to prevent drinking and driving on prom night." Early said, "I think it's so important." And the money came from the funding from a trust that's called the Drunk Driving Trust Fund. So I know at the K-8 level, we're always thanking PTOs, anything that can help to support, because, I mean, the PTOs do a lot, as they do here at Algonquin. The boosters help so much in our budget, but this is just another way of saying that someone has taken the initiative to write a grant, reach out to our legislators, and it's nice that probably that money will go to help give a great night to the kids, and I think that's one of the best nights that the kids love is the post-prom. So I don't know whether you had anything to add or not on that.
So, and it was our APTO. Our APTO came together and they reached out for this grant, and it was to offset some of the fundraising and expenses for the junior post-prom party. There are some events that the students just have to have. I mean, those were those memories are created, and it's a great positive opportunity. And to offset that funding, they reached out for grants, and Mr. Early came to the school and did present it to the APTO.
Nice, very nice.
It was excellent. At the same time, they presented the Care Filler grant monies as well.
Right. Thank you. So thank the APTO for doing the initiative on that. Thank you.
Communications, approval of bills and payroll, agenda items for next month. We have a busy month, election of officers, so this will be my last meeting chairing this committee. So the next, next month, we'll elect officers, and it'll be Southborough's turn to take the reins. So that's coming up. We have a school choice public hearing that we have and vote that we have every year. School committee, subcommittee and liaison assignments. So think about the things that you might be interested in. The athletic handbook. A draft. The student handbooks, final, because we had seen that already. And the social studies department will be giving a presentation. So,
There might be a few more ads between now
and then, okay. Pretty busy, so, any motion to adjourn?
I would move that we adjourn this meeting of the Northborough-Southborough Regional School Committee.
Reluctant second.
Hot dog third.
Moved by Bob, seconded by Jane. All those in favor? All right. And we are adjourned.